The more you cling to the past, the less you are able to embrace the present. This is a quote by the legendary spiritual teacher Eckhart Tolle. Indeed, a part of overcoming grief is to bid goodbye to that which is gone so that we can focus on what we do have. Pixar's 2009 film Up explores this concept exactly. It points out that the ups and downs of life are inevitable, but in order to experience the up, we must shed the dead weight of the down. But imagine a villain who's so all-consumed with his grief from the past, he would go to any lengths to fix it. From murdering explorers to attempting to kill both a little boy and an old man. This guy would not leave any stone unturned in his mission to regain his past glory. The person I'm referring to is Charles Muntz, a famous explorer in this fictional world who got ridiculed by the scientific community for evidently fabricating a discovery. In order to restore his name, Charles Muntz took off to the remote South American region, Paradise Falls, and spent 60 years in search of the creature that would prove his scientific discovery to be correct. But he committed crimes along the way, and in doing so, he deteriorated from a bright and popular young man into a crazy and vicious senior who wouldn't even let his crumbling body get in the way of killing someone to get what he wanted. In line with the general theme of the movie, this transition was terribly tragic. Charles Muntz could have led a very different life. I think that he could have gained a wider acclaim in the scientific community than he ever thought was possible. But first, he would need to let go of the past. And he would need to stop killing the people who came close to making the discovery that he wanted to make. Why didn't Muntz just go back to society with the major discovery that he had made? I mean, dude, you're definitely one of the smartest people in the world. And your invention was so powerful that it would have changed the world. Instead, this guy continues to live in a blimp for 60 years, with no one for company but dogs, and chases an overgrown chicken. The reasoning behind this is what makes this character such a tragic villain, and it teaches us a great deal about how to write a villain that ties in excellently with the theme of the film. Before I get to explaining how to do it though, let's first dive into the world where all this happens. Pixar's 2009 film Up is set in color and vibrancy. Based on offshoots of this film and the book that inspired it, we know that the characters live in interior Chinatown. The town is made mostly of skyscrapers that tower high into the sky. The message and symbolism that we get from this is the concept of heights in life. The symbolism is also heavily entrenched in the idea of change. Let's start at the beginning though. The film opens with a theater show featuring Charles Muntz, an eminent explorer. Watching all this is Carl Fredricksen, a shy child who looks up to Muntz. The film here focuses on wonder and enchantment. Carl, as a little boy, runs around town wearing goggles and a helmet. He jumps over cracks on the sidewalk. He soars over hurdles, and in his mind, he's making a commentary that likens him to Muntz, his hero. Then Carl meets Ellie, a vivacious little girl who's also wearing a helmet and goggles. We watch them bond over their shared love for exploration and become fast friends. In a makeshift tent, Ellie shows Carl her adventure book. She wants to go to Paradise Falls one day. This immense passion and love for life is what makes Ellie such a lovable character, and what happens later, so tragic. The scene cuts to the two of them all grown up and getting married. Together they build a cozy home and go picnicking and cloud watching on a hill. At this juncture, we watch Ellie making shapes of babies on the clouds. As Carl watches them with her, they grow in number. This depicts the immense longing of the couple for a child. But the doctors have bad news for them. They can't have children. Why does Disney get so real with us? Here, we first become acquainted with the idea of grief and loss that this film explores. While Ellie is heartbroken over all this, together she and Carl make a new goal for themselves. They decide to go to Paradise Falls. This decision will end up becoming critical not only for the plot, but also for the central theme of the film. I'll explain how at the right time. For now, Ellie recovers from her grief and goes back to her jolly old self. But as the years roll by, we watch the couple struggle. A jar that is labeled Paradise Falls and filled with coins never ends up meeting its purpose. One time, they have to get a new car. Another time, they have to pay medical bills. The couple bears it all with a smile. As long as they are together, they are happy to face any and all setbacks. Carl and Ellie grow old, and Ellie passes away. At this point, Carl is dealing with his grief by honoring the house that he and Ellie built together. With so much love left to give and no one to give it to, he pours his affection into the house. How, you might ask? By not selling it. The area around this cute little cottage has been acquired by what we assume is some real estate conglomerate. Construction is ongoing at full swing around it, and Carl's house looks a little out of place in the exact center of all this. Even now, a member of the construction crew comes over to Carl and relays a message from his boss. They would love to buy the house at double their last offer. Carl does not want to give up. He's so protective of the house, in fact, that when a crane pulls up on the street and knocks into the mailbox, Carl rushes to it. That's the only time we watch him cross the lawn. A crew member apologizes and tries to fix the mailbox, but Carl doesn't want him to touch it. In this tug of war, Carl loses his temper and whacks the man with his stick. This follows with court hearings, and Carl is put into a retirement home. But Carl doesn't want to let go of the house. He feels that by doing so, he has failed Ellie. The reason I'm talking so much about Carl refusing to let go is because this plays a central role in the theme and general message of the movie. You cannot allow something to rise up into the air until you have let go. In Buddhist tradition, in fact, the act of letting go and surrender is critical in order to keep on living. Carl, however, has no monk-like intentions at this time. He will later on, but that's upon the completion of his character arc. Charles Muntz, the tragic villain, plays a key role in the character development of Carl. And the fact that a villain should do this is really what's so sad. I keep going off on a tangent, but it will all make sense, I promise. But how does Carl meet Charles Muntz? Well, he carries the house to Paradise Falls. Carl and Ellie have always had an interest in balloons. During their first interaction, Carl injures himself and Ellie floats a balloon through his window. So at this point, we watch this man inflate 1 billion balloons and steer the house to South America. In this way, Carl's story is tied in strongly with the backstory of Charles Muntz. Not only is this man Carl's personal hero, he's also the hero of his wife, and he lives in the place where his wife wanted to go. That in and of itself imbues the character with complexity and tragedy. However, to understand the depth of this character, let's take a look at why Muntz went to Paradise Falls. Before I get into that though, I'd like to tell you about the origin of Charles Muntz. Yeah, he's based on a real person, but I'm sure most of you knew that by now. Charles Muntz's character is inspired by the real-life producer Charles Muntz, who tricked Walt Disney into giving up the rights for Oswald the Rabbit. But as the film goes, Walt redirected his energies to creating a certain mouse instead. Mickey Mouse is one of Disney's most celebrated characters and has become synonymous with the brand itself. But none of this would have happened if Walt Disney had stuck around mulling over the past. That's the message that the film here is trying to give. Charles Muntz may not be a renowned figure, but he has forever been immortalized in the character of Charles Muntz. And this person's descent into villainy is what caused it. Once upon a time, Charles Muntz was renowned and revered. The scientific community cherished the great discoveries that he has made during his adventures. In the beginning of the film, we find out that he also discovered the skeletal remains of a bird that was previously unknown to the world. At first, this great discovery was also met with a lot of praise and celebration. But at one point, he gets accused of fabrication and is stripped of his badge. The world humiliates him and calls him a fraud. In an effort to restore his name, Muntz takes off in a large blimp to Paradise Falls. This is a remote location in South America. The treacherous terrains of this area have protected its indescribable beauty, but they also make it difficult to navigate through. This site is home to the strange species of bird that Charles Muntz has discovered. He makes it his life's mission to prove the scientific community wrong and to show them the truth of the wonder that he has uncovered. In the opening sequence, as he sails away, Carl Fredricksen gazes upon him with respect. Carl also completely rejects the accusations that the community has made against Charles Muntz and looks up to Muntz with hope and admiration. It seems that he's the only one, though, except Ellie, of course. She's such a wonderful person. Over time, Muntz loses all his eminence. By the time that Carl is an old man, people simply don't know who Muntz is. This is reflected when Russell, a small boy who also wants to be an explorer, meets this legendary virtuoso. He doesn't know who Charles Muntz is.
Who's Charles Muntz?
The character arc of this villain is tragic. He went from being one of the most popular people in America to a forgotten relic of the scientific world. All of this could have been avoided. Charles Muntz could have changed his fate simply by letting go of the humiliation that he suffered and instead starting fresh and anew. Sometimes that's the only way forward. That's what Ellie did when she lost the dream of having a child. That's what Walt Disney did when he lost the rights to Oswald the Rabbit, and it's also something that Carl Fredricksen had to eventually do in order to re-experience life. Charles Muntz didn't give up, though. The reason his story is so pitiful is because rather than focusing on his talents, he spent years chasing a strange ostrich-peacock hybrid bird to prove to the world that he was correct. Simply chasing a bird would have been fine, though, but Charles did something much worse. He murdered 3 explorers and placed their skulls on a mantelpiece like trophies. He tried to murder Russell and Carl, and he wasn't unwilling to kill the bird either.
I'm taking that bird back with me, alive or dead.
What could cause such a smart and celebrated man who had such a great thirst for adventure and fulfillment to do something so evil? As we can see during the film, it wasn't the possession of the bird that drove him. Rather, it was the underlying motive behind it. He was so obsessed with getting the ostrich-peacock creature that he forgot his own true self, and in doing so, he deteriorated into a horrible and vicious person. Let's discuss the reasons for this. From the opening sequence of Up, it's apparent that Muntz's motive is to restore his name and glory. I, however, think that that's not what he wanted. Sure, he may have gone to Paradise Falls with the intention of finding the bird, bringing it back, and proving everyone wrong, but over time, his intentions changed. See, finding this ostrich-peacock creature was no easy job. Not only was the terrain of this land quite difficult to navigate, the bird itself was also quite smart. If it didn't want to come to Muntz, I don't think it would have. And since it sensed danger from Muntz, it seems very unlikely that the bird would have allowed itself to get caught. Muntz was dedicated, however. In an effort to find this bird, he trained a legion of canine friends. And he didn't just stop with training them.
But it's a talking dog!
Yep, that's right. Muntz created a special collar that, when worn by dogs, would translate their thoughts. He quite literally invented dogs being able to talk to humans, and not just in English either. This translator could change languages. If anyone's still missing the point here, allow me to say it out loud. Charles Muntz almost changed the world. Imagine how different the world would be if dogs could speak with people. And considering that he knew how to do this with dogs, I'm sure that he could have done it for other animals as well. Charles Muntz was an actual genius, but he spent so long cooped up in a blimp with 100 canines that he forgot who he was. He became so obsessed with capturing the bird that he forgot what it was truly for, to reinstate his former status.
Once I bring back this creature, my name will be cleared. Beautiful.
Now he was hunting down the creature with a much more demented intention.
More often I get thieves come to steal what's rightfully mine.
The man couldn't let go of the past. It's tragic to think of how big of an impact Muntz could have had on the world and how different his legacy could have been. I mean, seriously, inventor of a dog translator collar? That beats a bird discovery any day. However, his complete refusal to accept that the past was in the past is what ruined all of this for him. And when other people came close to discovering the bird, he murdered them. Furthermore, when Carl realizes the sinister nature of Muntz, he tries to protect the bird from this man. The little boy, Russell, tries to help. So now, Muntz is out to get them too. While Muntz's actions are horrifying, we can't help but feel sorry for the guy. This is especially true because none of this needed to be happening. Charles Muntz is a genius extraordinaire, and his invention proves that. He didn't need to be out here all by himself with 100 dogs trying to restore his name. In that sense, his true motive is ego. In another context, it could have been redemption, but the things that he did suggest otherwise. In order to figure out whether or not he was redeemable though, let's start with looking at him up close. Seeing this character in the flesh really changed Carl's and our opinion about him, and that's because of an impressive use of a trope. While Pixar did great at pulling off twist-reveal villains during the era of films like Up, the use of this trope in the character of Charles Muntz was unique. For most of the film, he doesn't make an appearance and is believed to be the good guy. When we first see him, he is shrouded in shadows. This hints at how the character has now faded from people's memory. But he steps out of the shadows to come off as a frail and unassuming figure. He's also very happy when he finds out that people still adore him.
My wife and I, we were your biggest fans.
Oh, you're a man of good taste.
Upon learning this, Muntz extends a warm welcome to Carl and Russell. For the next few minutes in the film, he's incredibly hospitable. Not only does he show Carl and Russell his collection of relics and artifacts, he also invites them to dine with him.
It's a pleasure to have guests. A real treat.
But then we see the skeleton of a bird, and his personality takes on a sinister tint.
Hey, that looks like Kevin.
Kevin?
Yeah, that's what the little boy calls this bird. It's hilarious. What's not hilarious, however, is that Muntz appears to have become frenzied in his preoccupation with the bird. Carl picks up on it immediately, and the realization chills him to the bone. I mean, we all got shivers at that point. This is especially true because Carl and Russell have, at this point, become good friends with the bird, and this guy seems to want to harm it. We watch Muntz talk into the shadows about his deep desire to get this creature. Carl is pretty scared now, and he tries to back away, but not before Russell lets slip that they know the bird and also how to capture it. So when Carl gets up and begins to leave, Muntz threatens him and the boy. The true face of Charles Muntz is bone-chilling, and not just for the skeletal remains that he's collected. Not only does he threaten to kill Carl and Russell like he has done 3 other people, he also does some other pretty horrible things. Let's take a look at the actions of Charles Muntz and see how they play into the character of the utterly tragic villain that he is. Charles Muntz invented a dog translator. He enabled mankind's oldest friend to be able to speak with us. I'm sorry, but I'm not just letting that go, especially because the other things that he did were so out of line with the potential of this luminary. See, Charles Muntz didn't just kill 3 people. He also went on to chase, injure, and capture the bird. One of his pet dogs, Doug, ran away with Carl and Russell, so he used the GPS tracker on the collar to track them down. I mean, this guy made a GPS tracker all by himself while being cut off from the world for 60 years. Since he didn't have any contact with or knowledge of the advancements in technology that civilization made, this was brilliant. It showed that he was honestly way too smart to be wasting his life away like that. What did he do with his brains though? He burned down Carl's house. Charles Muntz went from a brilliant scientific mind and innovator to a murderer and arsonist who kidnapped a bird. The reasoning behind doing so is sad. He was so consumed with rage, disappointment, and humiliation that he blanked out on who he was. He deteriorated. This awful character development arc is what makes Muntz such a tragic villain. It made us all feel bad for him, and made us wish that he had chosen to do things differently. We would have all benefited from his prodigy. Does that leave room for forgiveness for his crimes, though? I think that Muntz's original heroism was something worth being celebrated. It surely influenced the relationship between Carl and Ellie. Because of their shared appreciation of Muntz, these two developed a friendship that eventually blossomed into love. They led a beautiful life full of joy, and even overcame their grief because of a shared vision to go to Paradise Falls. Was it Muntz who influenced their life though? Or was it Carl and Ellie themselves? Did their innocence guide them through life, or does Muntz get to take any credit? This complexity is what makes Muntz such a well-written tragic villain. But before I tell you all about how exactly that is done, I'd like first to explain the redemption of Muntz. The possibility of redemption with a tragic villain is always written delicately. This is showcased beautifully in the character of Muntz. The reason he's an especially tragic villain is because he has done so much good in the past. Not only did he make incredible discoveries, Muntz also celebrated the explorer's life and the spirit of adventure. His tagline that's painted on his blimp. This passion, wonder, and delight cultivated an enchantment that led Carl and Ellie to one another. It guided them through their grief. It helped them set the sails for the ship of their combined life. And then, of course, Muntz created the dog collars. This man had already inadvertently caused two people to fall in love. Then he could have almost changed the world. Who knows what else he could have done? If only he had explored his potential. I strongly believe that if Charles Muntz hadn't become so hell-bent on capturing one particular bird and avenging the loss of his status, he could have done wonderful things. Instead, he went on to murder, attempt to murder, commit arson, and kidnap a bird. And the fact that all of this was a choice when it clearly didn't need to be is what makes his redemption impossible. Man, I wish we had dog translators, but I also wish it were easier to deal with loss. It unhinged Charles Muntz, but there's a great deal that we can learn from that. Loss is an inevitable part of life. Bad things happen to good people all the time, and we can sometimes not get the thing that we wanted the most. None of this is grounds for spite. To feel hurt by a betrayal or misfortune is one thing. To embark on a relentless mission to reverse it is another. That was the problem with Charles Muntz. He was so fixated upon the past and upon the bad thing that happened to him that he plateaued in life. It is this plateau, rather than his villainous nature, that is tragic. Charles Muntz wasn't particularly self-obsessed. Nowhere in the film did we watch him launch into a self-adulatory monologue. He didn't have any other particular obsession either. No, the only thing that this man cared about was his work. When he welcomes Carl into the blimp, we watch him walk through the hall displaying the relics. Muntz seems to be very proud of them. He lost the thing that he loved the most, his work, and he wanted to get it back. But his failure to accomplish this for over half a century drove him insane, and he turned to spite. It wasn't Muntz's failure or loss that made him spiteful, but rather the refusal to accept it. That is the message that Up conveyed. That's what Carl had to do in order to complete his character development arc and begin to re-experience life anew. But then again, Muntz inadvertently did this for Carl right before his death. If Muntz had not died in the manner that he did, Carl would not have been able to release what he was holding on to. I'll tell you what that was in just a minute, but I'm sure you already know. A man who kept causing all of these good things chose to live and die a villain. And that's what makes him so tragic. I'll get to the part about how he helped Carl in just a few moments. Before we bid him farewell, though, let's examine his character design. The character design of Charles Muntz brilliantly portrays the essence of his being. In the beginning of the film, he is shown through archival footage in a theater. Here, he is a dashing young man who appears to be the beacon of courage and innovation. This is consistent with both his public persona as well as the person that he is within. In the second appearance, however, his older figure is somewhat sharper and more intense. He's wearing a brown jacket and is overall donned in camouflage attire. This points towards the fact that he is forgotten. While his movements have been slowed down by old age, he is still quick and meticulous. This hints at the agility of his mind. But the man is clearly a prisoner of the past. The Zeppelin, spirit of adventure, is still maintained with precision and care. It shows that Muntz has not embraced changing tides and is unwilling to do so. His eyes are glinting. This points toward his exacting nature that blends in well with his razor-sharp features. But his demeanor is warm and welcoming. When the inner shadows of his nature surface, however, Muntz's face warps into a much more sinister look. It sharpens further, signifying the danger that this man presents. Charles Muntz made his first appearance in the film in shadows. In the final scene, though, he was in the clouds, but he wasn't in an up in his life. And that is because he chose for things to be that way. What a travesty! Near the end of the film, Muntz rams a rifle into the door of the floating house. He's trying to break it open so that he can capture the bird and kill whoever stands in the way. Right now, it is Russell and Doug. The plan, however, backfires spectacularly. Muntz, who is immensely intelligent, is outsmarted by Carl. The old man offers Kevin a piece of chocolate. Eager to get it, the bird breaks through the window of the house and rushes to get its treat. Doug and Russell hold onto its legs and are carried to safety. Muntz, however, is left in the house, and the house loses grip to the ties that are holding it. So we watch Carl lose the house that he so loved as it falls to its demise, carrying the antagonist inside it. This act of letting go is what causes Carl to begin life anew. It makes him re-experience joy at a time when he thought he had no hope left for it. There are a few things to note here. Muntz meets his death by a fall or going down, which plays in well with the theme of the film. He could have avoided this too, by simply offering the bird chocolate rather than trying to coerce it into capture. Russell has already told Muntz that Kevin likes chocolate, so the fact that he didn't employ an easier tactic to get the bird is what caused him to meet his death. One could also argue that Muntz had met his spirit death long ago. It was when he let the weight of his past imprison him and refused to get back up. Up was a beautiful film. The cataclysmic villain of this story made the delivery of the message all the more impactful. Charles Muntz left an ache in all of our hearts by showing us all that could have been. His character is a powerful mix of wicked intellect, derangement, and obsession. By understanding the role of each of these elements, you too can write a tragic villain that would deliver messages that move people to tears. Did you cry while watching Up? I didn't. No, really. Alright, let's get to the writing part. There are a few easy ways to cultivate a character that reveals a tragic past. However, for the purposes of this video, I'll only elaborate upon the tragic parts of him. So without further ado, here is a step-by-step guide to writing the perfect tragic villain. Step 1. Write a compelling backstory. The captivating narrative of Charles Muntz is meticulously crafted. It's crafted by showcasing him as a genuine hero who had hopes, dreams, and a passion for life. By depicting Muntz's origin to be a larger-than-life character who inspired others, the writers empowered his shadow self. This is because he was so good that seeing him fall from his rank hurt us all. I'm not talking about his loss of stature. I'm talking about his descent into villainy. Charles Muntz influenced the union of our beloved protagonists, Carl and Ellie. For him to turn out to be evil was painful, but what really made him tragic was the reasoning behind his evil. Step 2. Showcase wasted potential. Charles Muntz had so much potential to do good for the world. His innovations would have advanced science and technology by several centuries within a few decades. Seeing all of that go down the drain because of his derangement was awful to behold. But if he had gotten dementia due to old age or hadn't been conscious of what he was doing, we would have felt bad for him. Instead, he demonstrated sharpness of mind and an extraordinary patience to achieve his goals. He went by for years without sightings of Kevin and still didn't give up his pursuit. Imagine what he could have achieved if he applied that dedication elsewhere. Step 3. Make them make a conscious choice for evil. The reason Charles Muntz is such a tragic villain is that he consciously chose to murder people rather than simply going mad. While we can see that his faculties are becoming increasingly warped, it's also clear that he could have been a very different person if only he had let go of the past. Step 4. Tie them in strongly with the protagonist's storyline. Muntz's strong tie-ins with Carl's storyline impart depth, complexity, and nuance to his character. The manner in which he influenced Carl's life, always for the better, makes his character arc even sadder. Step 5. Make their motive antithetical to the message of the film. Muntz wanted to restore his past glory. Unfortunately, the entire film was built in antithesis to this. That is why the tragedy of Muntz's motivation and the effort that he put into it stood out. It wasn't just that he was being barbaric in pursuit of that which he wanted, rather, he was being patient and clever. For him to still not succeed and to rather choose an evil path is what made him a sad character to watch. All in all, Charles Muntz is a spectacular piece of fiction writing. His character moves in a gradient, heavily influences the plot of the film, and helps us understand the moral of the story. This villain was so well written, in fact, that I almost didn't hate him. I mean, except of course for the evil things that he did, I just wish he'd patented the dog collars. Man! Anyway, what did you all think? At what point should Charles Muntz have come back to civilization and decided to just live his life? Could he ever have been anything other than a tragic villain? Let me know in the comments below.